All right. Welcome to Overgrow the System to Harley.
Hello.
Hello. Today we're going to talk about some like raising meat on a homestead. You
Yes,
got
we are.
you got lots of experience with that, and that's good to talk about.
A bit, yeah. I've only been doing this I was living with my mother's property, and she had a bunch of chickens for a long time that I would help with. I've done incubation and helped different breeds and all that jazz. We started doing rabbits about, I want to say 3 years ago. I think it's been 3 years ago. We started doing meat rabbits and other things as well after that. But I definitely far prefer doing rabbits over chickens or other fowl for a lot of reasons.
What kind of breed of meat rabbit?
There are lots of different breeds of meat rabbits, actually. And in
Yeah,
my
no, like which one do
personal,
you have?
I have several. I don't have just one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And personally, I find that the best ones are usually mixed breeds. And it also kind of depends on what you're looking for beyond, are you just raising them for meat or do you have other purposes for the rabbit? So when I started doing this, keep in mind, I grew up kosher. I'm not kosher, but I grew up kosher. So rabbit was like a big no. So I was like, what do you mean you want to get into doing rabbits? Like that was a huge, what the hell for me? And what got me to accept the idea was, okay, I get to choose a breed, but I'm going to choose a breed where I can use every part of the rabbit to its fullest potential. I don't want to let anything go to waste. So I chose to start off with Rex rabbits because they're not as big as some meat rabbits get, but they still get pretty hefty. They're also very friendly, very sweet. They make excellent pets. And their fur is super plush and soft, and I sew purses. So I'm like, okay, I can use their fur for purses. I can use their feet and tails for keychains and charms. So I could get the most out of this rabbit. Other people don't care about that. So they'll just go for whatever biggest meat to bone ratio breed they can get. So it
Yeah.
really just depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I've seen some people that have like those New Zealand giant ones where it's like 9 pounds 2 weeks after it's born, you know?
I don't know about 2 weeks. That's definitely an exaggeration, but 2 weeks, they're barely weaned at that age. But yeah, there are definitely, like, they're the Flemish giants, which get really big. However, you don't want to just strictly raise Flemish giants for meat. They're actually not very meaty. They're mostly bone. So that's why I say that mixed breeds are a better option, because you might get a big rabbit. That doesn't mean you're getting a lot of meat off that rabbit.
Right. You want a hybrid.
Exactly. I mean, there are definitely some breeds that are like New Zealand's, just plain old New Zealand's. They get to be around, I've seen some close to about 15 pounds, but on average, I'd say about 12 to 13. And they're a pretty good meat breed rabbit. However, they're less social. They get a little more mean, which, to be honest, kind of makes them easier to kill. But yeah, there's less guilt behind that when they're mean. But they're also like, they have very coarse hair. So if you're planning on using something, using the furs for whatever reasons, they're not a really good breed for that. So there's a lot of things to consider when getting into this, for sure, what your overall intentions are.
And I mean, obviously, they all put out rabbit shit pretty much the
Oh, yeah.
same.
Oh, yeah. So like if you have a garden or anything, their poo makes excellent fertilizer.
Oh, yeah, you can sell that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They make so much of it. Like that's what we would do is we actually had a local friend who raised his own, not raised, but he had his own organic farm, and he would come over and bring like this massive loads of produce that just wasn't good to sell or whatever it may be, just damaged produce, and he'd bring it over that so we could use it for our rabbits and the chickens, and we'd exchange just a crap ton of rabbit poo for it.
You probably love that deal.
Oh yeah, yeah, it was wonderful.
Um, I mean, they seem like they have some pretty obvious upsides. They're
Ye-
quick, they're easy, they're less bastard-like than chickens.
That's, if you, to be honest, I've had some absolute assholes. like really, really nasty psycho ones. Now, usually I'm kind of more of a softie. I have a hard time putting down the ones that are really, really sweet. If they would make a great pet for somebody, I do what I can to get them a home as a pet first, honestly. But if there's just, some are just born antisocial, some are just not friendly. In that case, it's like, well, why bother rehoming it? They don't like people. They are part of the food chain, like it or not. They are part of the food chain.
Yeah, it's gonna die
So
sometime.
it is. It is. I'm like, what am I going to do? Let it loose and out in the desert where there's coyotes and crap everywhere? You know? So yeah, but as far as I've had a few people, including yourself, I had other people asking me what the benefit to raising, why not chickens? Chickens give you eggs. Chickens also give you meat. Well, there's actually a lot behind this, why I suggest doing rabbits instead. And as somebody who spent 5.5 years with chickens, I can tell you they do not always produce eggs like you'd like them to. They're actually very finicky with the weather, and they have periods of time where they just will not produce eggs at all whatsoever. So then you're just feeding a bunch of moochers for a while. They only live a couple of years usually. They don't exist. Their incubation and the amount of time it takes to grow and raise chickens is longer than rabbits. With rabbits, their gestation's only 30 days. They can get pregnant as they're giving birth.
Insane.
I'm not even kidding. They can get pregnant as they're getting birth. Their litters can be, on average, like 5 or 6 too. I've had a litter of 14. I've had a litter of 14 before. And usually, depending on what breeds you have, usually they are ready to be put down for meat purposes by 10 to 12 weeks, 16 weeks if it's a Rex. They're just a little slower growing. And that's also when their fur is better. Good for, so it's like for crafting purposes or whatever. So I believe it's something like the amount of meat you can get from one good trio, so 2 females to 1 male, in a year is more meat than you would get from an entire cow in a year.
And you probably put in less food.
Oh yeah, they really don't eat that much. Yeah. So, and not to mention, they don't smell like chickens do.
They don't roost or crow in the morning.
Mm-hmm. They are a lot cleaner than chickens. They're actually a lot easier to put down and skin and prepare. Chickens, you got to sit there and pluck them all day long. It stinks. It's not fun. With rabbits, once you're like good in season, you can have a rabbit freaking gutted and skinned within like 10 minutes. If that. I've seen some get it done I've seen videos of some guys getting it done with like 2 minutes per rabbit.
Wow.
Yeah, they just rip off the skin, cut it up, dig in, scoop everything out. They're done.
Like old school bushmen, just pulling the shit out.
Actually, you don't really have to pull out their poo so much because they're like these little tubes. You just kind of pull out the intestines and you're good.
That's what I mean, the guts. I'm just picturing somebody that's hunting rabbits in the woods with a bow and arrow,
Right.
They probably wouldn't screw around very long.
They're also not very bloody. They're actually once you cut the head off, there's a little bit, but it takes like 5 seconds and it's done. It's not like there's blood everywhere when you're gutting them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really, I don't know why lots of people are against rabbitry. I'm not against it. I think if you had to pick one, chickens and rabbits, but I mean, as you're saying, they make so much more meat.
Well, and they also take less space.
Yeah.
Chickens need like an entire coop set up. They need to have lots of room to walk around and everything. With rabbits, I mean, they burrow most of the time. So as long as you're going to have to, if you want them to be in a free range setting, which I do not recommend for the females always, depending on where you live. We've had our females free range for a while, and where I live in rural desert Arizona, so we get snakes, we have tons of ants, And ants are attracted to the blood after they're born on those babies, so they will eat those babies alive. They'll bite them to death. Like, so I really do not. And again, snakes, so many damn snakes. I really don't recommend free ranging your rabbits, especially the females, if you live in a place like here.
And
But
I was watching a YouTube video on it where the guy was saying if you free range your females, one female rabbit will become the matriarch dominant one, and it will
you,
actually disembowel and sterilize the other
you
females.
know what? That can happen. We've never had that happen. Even with the males, like the males can get aggressive. We had our males living free range with the chickens, and they got along just fine. It was really, as long as they had their own personal space, they didn't care. It was
Yeah, they
really,
need
yeah.
their territory.
Yeah, it was really rare that there was ever a fight or an issue or anything. So, I mean, yes, it definitely can happen for sure, but we've never really had that problem, to be honest.
That same video I saw, they had this setup where they had the rabbit cages over top and the chickens free ranging underneath in
You
like
know
an
what? I think I know
enclosed
exactly
area.
what video you're talking about.
Polyface Farms, Joel Salatin.
Possibly. It's been a few years since I've watched it, but I think I know what you mean. I
It
think
was
I've
a
seen
pretty
it.
good video. I wouldn't be surprised if you'd seen it.
Probably.
It broke it down in a really interesting way, and they were doing really clever things where they were like using parts of the rabbit cycle where the shit would fall into the chickens would eat that, you know,
Right.
minimizing waste and making things parts of larger systems.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. It was a wonderful setup. So, and yes, with cages, you know, I don't necessarily like sticking them in tiny cages. Like the minimum is pretty, they say, oh, rabbits only need this much space. I like going bigger than that personally. And
Yeah.
with the babies, we have like a massive hand built cage, like made out of layers of chicken wire and everything that it was pieced together ourselves. And it's massive, so they have tons of room to run around and play, especially when they're little. You do have to be careful because again, predators can happen, so you're gonna want to like put some extra safety wire around the edges to prevent snakes and such from coming in. um
I'm in Canada. We don't have any snakes, but
Really, yeah, see here, they're everywhere. They are
I mean,
absolutely everywhere here.
there's predators everywhere. I guess appear to be like raccoons and hawk.
Well, raccoons can take them too, rats can take them. And in
But we don't have
fact,
rats either.
like if you're not careful, okay, so female rabbits are kind of dumb, and they're more concerned about protecting their territory than they are their actual offspring. So if a female rabbit feels threatened, she'll actually stomp and destroy the nest and the babies to keep predators out from her territory. So I've had that happen a couple of times. Unfortunately, I come out and I've just found like smashed newborn babies in the nest, and I found like um, some kind of animal clawing
Prowling.
around the area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I start nesting or shelving. I start shelving the babies, which means keep in mind rabbits don't bond with their babies typically. It means you take the babies, you keep them with you in a nest, and then you bring them out once or twice a day to feed and take them right back in. Mother rabbits do not spend time bonding with their babies. They literally will just feed their babies and leave all day long, and then come back and feed and leave again.
Yeah. Rabbits aren't exactly high up there on parenting skills.
No, I've had some exceptions for sure, but it's not the norm.
So, uh, and that's pretty interesting. So, rabbits obviously really high up there on the rankings.
And again, it really does. I know people who raise meat rabbits in their apartments. It doesn't take very much room to do.
And there's probably no stupid ass bylaws against it, right? Like you know how some places you're not allowed to keep chickens?
There are, you know what, it does depend. I've heard of some people who have had um mainly like SPCA get involved. There's actually, I think it was in Arizona, there was this girl who was in Girl Scouts or 4-H or something, and she had a bunch of rabbits and they were all for her program, and someone didn't like it and someone reported her, and SPCA took them all away because you just don't need to have that many. There are no grounds otherwise. They were not mistreated or anything. They just went, oh, you don't need that many. And I think eventually they did compensate her or give some back or something.
That's wild.
Yeah. This was like I think she's like a 15-year-old autistic girl doing a 4-H program with her parents or something like that. And someone just didn't like that, that is a concern. Is sometimes you get the peanut nut jobs looking in, oh, I don't like that you're raising me. And then so they'll try to ruin that for people. But
That happens in every form of agriculture, though.
exactly.
There's a war on farmers. The people who make our food have never been more uh, attacked. I would even say, like, it's extreme at this point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely seen some drama in that rabbit world and all, but overall, it's a very solid especially to get started. If you're just starting to get into homestead and learning how to raise your own meat, it's a lot less commitment than a pig or a
Yeah.
cow or or yeah, even chickens. That's just it. A lot of places aren't allowed to have chickens because of the noise. Well, rabbits don't make noise.
They're so much easier to do a stealth project, you know?
They really are. Like I said, I know people who do these from their apartments.
Yeah, they don't really. I wouldn't say they're on the same level as pigs, though. I mean, the pig does take a lot more work, but
And
you
more
know,
space. You do have to have a big outdoor area for them.
oh, it's yeah. There's not really much. There's not very many similarities, you know. A
Oh
pig
yeah, no,
is like
totally. I'm just saying if
totally
you
different
want to
ball game.
yeah, I'm just saying if you want to get started in raising meat, I would suggest doing something small like rabbits before you get into like raising a big ass pig or something. Because I know a lot of people go, "Oh, I just want to start with a pig." Slow down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Please slow down. Let's start small, okay?
There's no just about taking on a pig. That's
Exactly.
oh man, they are a lot of work.
And they're aggressive. They can. I mean, I know they can be really sweet, but they can also be assholes.
I've worked on a pig farm. I've never ever seen a sweet pig.
You know what? Actually, one time a neighbor's 3 pigs broke out of her enclosure and wandered into our yard, and they just let us like pet them and hug them, and
Oh, they're docile.
they were very docile. They were hysterical, but yeah, there are definitely some aggressive ones out there.
I mean, it's not like something you should be super concerned about, but I mean, you
Right.
wouldn't want to fall down and be passed out. They're
Yeah.
not they're not sweethearts.
No.
Fuck pigs. I got bit by a pig one time.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah, no, exact. Well, actually, it was pretty surprising. I was over a 3.5 foot wall, and this like 800-pound sow mama was mad that I was scooping up her piglets because we were castrating the males. And she jumped up on her hind legs and reached over and grabbed me on the back of like the
Oh my
shoulder blade.
gosh.
I was so surprised. I didn't think pigs could get their front paws off the ground or whatever, the hoofs.
Yeah, they don't look like they really can very easily.
Yeah, and plus I didn't expect her to give a shit. She was, she'd given birth. She was just laying there feeding the other ones. Like, I'm amazed that she did that. I will always be amazed that she did that. It blew my mind.
Yeah. And rabbits can definitely get a bit territorial like that with their baby. Like I said, some just flat out do not care. In fact, one of the first rabbits that I put down, my mom and I went half and half on a very expensive breed of rabbit. One that's known to be good and meaty, one that has like amazing fur color and texture. And so we bought her already bred. Now, female rabbits are like humans when pregnant. They can get hormonal, they can get bitchy, they can get feisty. It's just nature.
Oxytocin.
Yeah, so she was really on edge. She was all psycho and angry, and they grunt. Sometimes rabbits, when they're angry, they'll grunt. So you hear like ruff, ruff, ruff. She was doing that constantly to us, and nipping, and we're like, it's okay, it's okay. Well, she gave birth to the babies and immediately tried to kill them.
Ah,
So we tried breeding her again a second time because we're like, maybe she was just stressed out. Maybe she, we don't know what could have happened. No, she was even worse the second time. So at that point, we're like, screw it. We're not even going to try. And we just went ahead and put her down. Now I do raise some breeds.
did you get any kits off of that one with the special?
No,
Oh, that's too bad. You lost that
nope.
genetic.
We did. They all died off. And she wouldn't even breed again. She was refusing to breed. She was just psycho. I've had others that absolutely love being mothers. And if you would, I had one girl in particular. She was very protective of her babies, and like she liked me. She was perfectly fine with me touching her babies and me giving her loves, but other people made her nervous when she had her babies around. So if other people got too close to her babies, she would kind of grunt and make noises and nip a little bit. But if I was there, she was so funny. She would actually kind of like coo, which rabbits don't normally do. But she would kind of like express concerns, and I pet her, make sure she was okay, and then she'd relax and let me take her babies. So they all have very different personalities. They really do. But again, when they're a little more aggressive, that kind of makes them a little easier to put down.
100%. It's like after when I was working on that pig farm, every time I eat pork now, it's a victory.
Right?
You know, another one down.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Us or them.
I still have the fur of that psycho one that killed her babies. I have it in the freezer.
That brings up an interesting point on the because that's something that anybody that raises pretty much any other kind of meat doesn't have to consider. Well, I guess you do tan cowhide, but not for fur. What is your process on uh, processing the fur?
It is not easy. I do not live in a good climate for processing fur at all whatsoever. Because normally, what you would do, you would use a special tool to remove the flesh from the inside of the
Yeah,
pelt,
you
and
scrape
you
it.
would, yeah, and you would soak the pelts in a solution of alum, non-iodized salt, and water, and you would let it kind of just brine, and you'd stir it up a few times, few times a day, and do that for however long until it gets like the right, like a certain texture and everything, and then you're supposed to keep stretching it out and drying it and stretching it and drying it.
Working it.
The problem is here, it's so dry and so warm that it's really hard. I can really only do it a couple of months out of the year, because otherwise they just rot. It gets so hot, it just rots in a couple of days. So considering I only have that small window of time to work on what is typically like easily a 2-week process, I don't really get a whole lot of practice. And I've had some pelts come out just fine and others just destroy, so it's not an easy thing. I've tried to find local tanneries that will do this for me. I can't find anybody local at all.
That's pretty
So
niche.
yeah, and we live in a pretty cowboy rich type area. This is southern Arizona, where there's farms and ranches all over the place, and I can't find a freaking tannery for a reason. It's
That
just not a good area.
that's wild. I mean, tanneries nowadays, it's more like commercial, uh, you know, cattle
Yeah.
sort
Yeah.
of stuff. They don't go
I've
small.
Right. And I have found some places that will accept your frozen pelts and tan them for you, but they're typically out of state. So then I'm going to have to, figure out how to ship them and keep them cold. And it's just going to be so freaking expensive. So I kind of just keep in my freezer and I wait for that little window and try to do what I can. But it's not an easy process. I do use the feet for keychains. I'll use the tails for like little purse charms, and I also will cut the ears and cook them in the oven, turn them into dog chews.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I use up what I can, for sure.
That's the best way to do it. Use every piece.
No, I agree.
All right. How do they rot? You would think that the heat and the dry would dry them out real quick so they couldn't rot.
I think it's in the water. Like yeah, it's in the water.
Oh,
Like as they're
when they're in that
soaking.
bucket, it gets too hot.
Exactly, when they're in that bucket and they're soaking and it's just heat. And even if I'm putting it in the shade and everything, I don't want to leave it in my house because I've got pets in the house. I don't want them drinking it or pulling out pelts and making a nasty mess. So it's really not something we can do out in the summers here. Not when it gets to be like 110. one day and they're just toast.
110 sounds hot. If
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, I think I remember I googled American is uh into other temperature, and 100 is 37, I think. So 110 is just that's
Oh,
beyond
you
my
Fahrenheit to Celsius?
yeah, freedom height.
Yeah, it gets pretty darn nasty out down here. So it's not something I can consistently do. But when I do have those furs, then I just kind of cut them up and use them as like accent pieces and such on the bags that I make. So yeah, I do. And then even the bones, I'll save the bones. I have a collect. I'll bury. I wanted to get into the beetles, the flesh eating,
Yeah,
bone cleaning
the
beetles, but again,
scavenging.
bad climate. So I just kind of bury them and dig them up later.
A little bit gruesome, but it works.
It
Uh,
is what it is, it's nature.
Absolutely. I mean, that way something gets fed, right?
Oh, totally. I mean, if you can, bury them around where you've got plants growing. Hell, when we clean them out, we would have their blood, like as we're gutting them, and, we'd keep their blood in a bucket, add water to that, and put it in the plants. And it makes such a difference. Like they're back at my mom's property. She had this one section of like aloe vera, really big section of aloe vera, and it was right by where we would cull and clean the rabbits. And so all that blood and water would just wash out into the aloe. And the difference in that aloe vera versus the ones that were on the other side of the yard, not getting that blood, still getting the same water, all the same amount, but not getting that enriched rabbit blood, drastic difference.
I mean, it's just not concentrated blood meal. People pay a lot of money for those kind of supplements.
Yeah. That's just it. There's just so much benefit to raising it. First, everything benefits from it. Your property will benefit. You will benefit. Your pets will benefit. It's excellent dog food. I know people who will actually like just cull a rabbit and just give it to their dogs and feed them raw rabbit like once a week.
My dog would freaking love that, but it would be hard to get her to stop. Once I fed her rabbit, she'd be hunting the ones we have.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Thankfully, ours were never so bad with that. I had one dog that loved eating the poop,
mm,
like just the poop, because he's a freaking weirdo. My cats do hunt down the feet that I have stored and the ears, which they don't actually eat the ears, they just treat them as toys.
yeah,
So the cats are honestly a lot worse than the dogs are.
yeah. I've caught my dog with half a rabbit in her mouth before, just that she caught wild.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
She all
thankfully,
over that.
thankfully my dogs have never actually caught a wild rabbit, but they have dug up ones that I had previously buried. That
That
actually
happens,
happened just the other day. I lost last week. I lost one of my girls. This was her first litter, and she died in labor, unfortunately.
Rick.
And yeah, and so I buried her, but my dog stood there watching me bury her the whole time. So
Wait,
no matter how deep I went, no matter how much I packed it in, a couple of days later, she dug it up, and I was out at work, and my son apparently picked up the rabbit, put it on a table, and put a little blanket on it.
yeah. Aw, that's too bad. Dogs, that's something you gotta work around. Everybody should have
Yeah.
a dog.
Oh yeah.
What
Yeah,
kind of dogs do you
definitely.
have down there?
I've got a Chihuahua. Do have a cattle dog that kind of just claimed herself as mine. Like she just started following me home on my bike rides, and then one day decided to never leave my property. So we have her. She's actually the one that dug up the rabbit.
Of course.
And I we have a third little mutt thing. I have no idea what she is. She was labeled as a dachshund at the shelter, and she's not a dachshund. I can promise you that.
Some sort of thing, yeah.
I don't know what she is, but she's not a dachshund. Okay. And, but she's really sweet. So
That's awesome. My dog is a winter dog. She's half husky, half Australian Shepherd.
that's
She's all fluff.
all fluff.
Yeah,
Oh,
from both sides, right?
Yeah, ours are all short hair, which is good for out here, but
Exactly. I think me and my dog would both melt and die in Arizona.
mm-hmm. Oh no, once it gets like 65, I'm already complaining that it's too hot outside.
I don't know what that is. Hold on, I'll Google it.
Oh yeah, sorry. I don't know what that is in Celsius either.
That's the funny thing about America. It's that freedom height of yours. It's hard to translate. 67. My phone knows me so well that now anytime I put in a number, it automatically goes Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion. So that's 20 degrees. Yeah, I'm with you. Anytime it's over, pretty much when it gets over 15, I start to be like, okay, when's the snow coming back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how I am. Phoenix is worse though. Like I live um outside of Tucson, but Phoenix is a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean,
And that's another thing I'd like to tell people who are considering getting to rabbits, especially if you live in a warmer climate. Be careful about purchasing your rabbits from breeders who live in cooler climates because they're not used to that heat. Once it gets to be warmer weather, you're going to have to be diligent about keeping them nice and cool. Even if inside, if your AC is not up to par or something, rabbits handle cold a lot better than they handle heat. We actually had one really horrific afternoon where it was just already a huge mess. Our electric company screwed up wiring to the house. It caused an electrical fire and damaged a bunch of crap on Christmas Eve a few years ago.
Christmas Eve.
Oh yeah, on freaking Christmas Eve. And I killed off like a ton of electronics. Like it was bad. And so they were supposed to come and fix it. They waited forever to do that. And we were already planning on creating like a big air conditioned outdoor area to keep them cool and comfortable during the summer. Well, right as we were planning on getting that set up is when the electric company decided that was the time where we couldn't have access to our backyard for a couple of weeks because they were digging all the freaking wiring up to replace it. So, and not only that, they would tell us, "Oh, we'll be here tomorrow," not show up. "Oh, we're going to be here, in 2 days from now." They'd show up the next day instead. So they were never consistent with when they were coming. And
Typical.
because of that, we weren't able to get that set up in time. We had a heat spike where it went from like 80 degrees to like 100 in like 2 days.
Around
And
Christmas?
no, this was like when they waited so long to get after us. So this
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
in March,
Months later.
and it killed 11 rabbits that
Like,
afternoon. They all died of heat stroke. I was like frantically running around everywhere, spraying them down with the hose to keep them cool, bringing them inside, trying my best. And I mean, it was like every time I went outside, I hear another one start screaming of heat stroke. It was horrific.
oh, jeez.
And most of those the ones that survived are ones that were raised in the Phoenix or Tucson area where it was warmer and they were used to that heat. The ones that died were raised in Prescott and Flagstaff and other higher altitude, cooler areas. So for sure, if you live in a similar situation, be careful about purchasing rabbits from cooler climates, especially if you plan on raising them outside.
Chickens wouldn't have a heat problem, would they?
You know what? We've had a few that have, but they were also older, and
That's an
they were
interesting
also.
that's an interesting flip because up here it's the opposite.
Oh
Rabbit,
yeah,
you don't really have to you don't have to pay for heating or air conditioning, right? It's just they like the climate. But a chicken, you have to pretty much constantly monitor that shit, otherwise they'll die
yes,
of the cold.
yeah. No, there were some chickens that have died from heat, but it wasn't quite as common. I mean, they still had like a full on like, covered coop. Their whole area had like, a couple of trees in there to keep them shaded and everything. But, it's Tucson. It's going to get hot. Um, we also had
Sorry,
serramas.
can I pause you for a second? Something's happening
Yes.
upstairs. I gotta go check on.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine. I've got two kids and an obnoxious little chihuahua, so I've had to pause plenty of times during podcasts.
I swear she was barking at a squirrel. I looked out the freaking front door, and the only thing on in the yard was a squirrel.
Yeah.
Fool dog.
Yeah. No, I get that.
You were on a roll. You were talking chicken breeds that do well in the heat.
Not so much as ones that do well in the heat, but like just ones that we did have to kind of monitor a little more closely. We also had back when we were living on my mom's property, which was like, about 5 years. We also got, well, she already had chickens when I moved in with her. And after that, we then got into quail. She picked up Seramas, which are the smallest breed of chickens. They're like the size of a dove or a pigeon.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so we did those for a while. Ducks, muscovy. Do you know what a muscovy is? You
Yeah,
do. Okay.
kind
A
of
lot
duck.
of people don't know what that is. So for those who don't know, it's like a duck, but it's not, or like a goose, but it's not.
It's like a
It's a,
weird mix.
it is. It's like its own thing. Like it's not like a type of duck. It's just called a muscovy, and they have like clawed, webbed feet. They don't honk. They like hiss. They're actually really quiet and they're big. And personally, I prefer them over duck because I mean, I don't know, duck meat tends to have like a really greasy, rich flavor.
Yeah,
It's not something I personally can eat very much of. Muscovy is more like Salisbury steak.
decent.
It is. It's interesting, and they don't require a bunch of water like to swim in like ducks do. I
I,
mean, obviously they need some to drink and all that, but they're
yeah,
mostly land fowl. So,
I lean towards ducks because I want to have a lot of nursery trees stuff, and ducks don't dig and uproot things,
yeah, that's true.
so they're a pretty good combo for that. But you know, like you're saying, the meat's not perfect. Although a lot of people like the eggs of ducks.
Yeah, and like, I know plenty of people who love duck meat, so by all means, I just personally like it's good, but eating really rich, greasy meats can be kind of hard for me to do. So like I could take like 3 bites of duck and then I'm done. So for me, I prefer the lighter meats in that regard. Which also kind of brings me because a lot of people ask me, well, what does rabbit taste like?
Yeah, good point.
And it is a very, very lean meat, and you do have to be kind of careful when cooking it because there's so little fat that it dries out really easily if you don't cook it right. So a lot of people will tell you low and slow, slather it in bacon grease. Personally, that's close, but my preferred method, and this has not failed me, is crock pot. Make sure you got some kind of broth or something in there, keep it moist. Slather it in olive oil. I find that olive oil maintains the moisture much better, and I cook it on high for like 6 hours, and it just falls right off the freaking bone. And you can season it just like you would with like chicken or any other meat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a shit cook. I can't even participate. I just kind of throw something in a pan, put it in the oven. When it's hot, I eat it.
Rabbit's easy. Like I said, I just slather in olive oil and I just throw on whatever seasonings on there and it's all good to go. The key is just to make sure you have enough moisture in there because it does dry out really easily. But
Yeah.
the crock pot method like that hasn't failed me so far.
So we've covered tanning, store. Have we covered how you store the? Actually, yeah, I guess we have. You just freeze it, right?
The meat, freeze
Yeah.
the meat. Yeah, you can just freeze the meat.
Um,
We can usually stick a whole rabbit like in one freezer size bag, Ziploc, wrap it up and just stick it in the big Ziploc and you're good.
yeah, after you process it.
Mm-hmm.
Should we even talk about the butchering aspect, or is that something you figure people will have to?
If you want.
Sure. I mean, I'm not against it.
All right. So if you want to put down the rabbit, there is an item called the hopper popper, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You stick the rabbit on there like by the feet, and it's just a quick way to dispatch and break the neck of the rabbit. We it is a little bit of an investment, it is a specialized tool, so it's got a little money. What we actually do is we'll put the rabbit down on the ground and we'll put like a rebar behind its neck and just pull real fast, real hard. And it just breaks their neck. It kills them instantly so they don't feel any pain. It's just done. I do not recommend shooting it in the head
No,
with like a BB gun because if you miss, that rabbit is suffering, you know.
100%.
Yeah, so I don't recommend that. But when you're done, you would then hang up your rabbit one way or another. We kind of just use a tree and some wires. And
Yeah, to bleed it.
yeah, exactly. Which only takes a couple of seconds. Just have like a bucket down there, slit the throat, let it bleed out. It's done so quickly, so quickly. And immediately you can start actually processing the rabbit. So if you want, you can cut off the head and get that done, maybe bury the skull. Or if you want to tan it, you can also use the brains to tan the hide.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
bring that up when you're talking about tanning because you use the brine method, right? I guess you would call it.
yeah.
Um, and I've only ever, I mean, the only things I've ever processed were chickens and then things that I hunted, so
Mm-hmm.
pheasants and deer. But with that, I just used, I mean, I experimented with brain tanning, but
Mm-hmm.
it was tricky for sure.
Yeah, I've done the egg method.
Yeah, the egg white.
And yes, I've done the egg method and I've done using shoe polish as well. Yes, yeah. Like towards the end though, like as it's drying, you can kind of rub in some like or not shoe polish. Well, kind of. It's mink oil is what I meant to say.
Right, yeah.
So like what you would buy, yeah. So I've done that method as well.
It's a lot
And
different for rabbits because you want to keep the fur, right?
yes. So there's a lot of like stretching to keep it flexible so you can mold with it and everything. But yeah, so if you plan on keeping the fur, then you might want to just chop off the head, get that done, get it over with. I would suggest cutting, if you have dogs, I would suggest cutting off the ears and setting them aside in their own separate Ziploc, rinse them off if they got a little blood on them. And you can cook the ears in the oven on about, I think I do like 400 or 425 for, I don't have an exact time to be honest. I kind of just poke in and check and see how they feel, you know. They
When it's
kind of start
crunchy, she's done.
yeah, they kind of start to smell like kettle cooked potato chips, which is a little creepy to me, to be honest, but the dogs love it and that's what matters. So you can do that. If you want to keep the skull, do your thing. So then you got the head off. If you want to do stuff with the feet, go ahead and cut off the front feet, the smaller paws, if you plan on keeping those. I use those for zipper pulls personally. And you're going to take your knife and you're going to kind of cut around the base of the legs, like around the legs, around the ankles, I guess you could call it, on the back feet, and kind of pull that down a little bit so that can come off quicker. And you would also, I guess you could also cut off the tails too. And you would like cut a slit down the center of the front. Well, actually, you don't have to do that either. You can just kind of cut around the fur and just pull the whole thing down in one fell swoop.
Yeah, like a sock.
Yeah, you just kind of pull it down like a sock, which my kids, my precious little homestead anarchist children think is hysterical if you use it as like a sock puppet after you peel it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're dark. But
But you know what? They know it's nature. They know it's part of life. My son wants to be like a homestead chef, and my daughter wants to be a doula. So they both understand, you know, life cycles and using everything, you know.
it's a hundred
So,
percent better than those kids that think food comes from the supermarket.
oh no, totally. They understand where it comes from. They understand the sadness of the death, but they also understand the purpose of the food cycle, you know, or a food pyramid, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the whole where they exist in
Yeah, not food pyramid. You know what I'm trying to say. I'm spacing.
the
But
the food
anyway,
chain.
food chain. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyway, So yeah, rip off the pelt in one fell swoop. Get that all out there. It's nice and skinned. Go ahead and start cutting down the center of the rabbit. And that's when all the guts and everything are going to be exposed. Be very careful about busting open the gallbladder
Yeah, you don't want to
and
puncture
the
that.
livers and stuff. Exactly, because then you're just going to spoil your meat. So pull that all out. It's super clean. There's no blood. It's just like if you were gutting a turkey you got from the supermarket, honestly. And you can have the whole thing just like, rinse it off, get off any extra blood or fur that might have clung to it. You can have it all done within 10 minutes.
And then into the freezer.
Yep, and then in your freezer. We've
Painless.
also we've also performed we've had to do like rabbit autopsies a few times, and it's amazing what you can learn about anatomy through rabbits, since they tend to hide illnesses very well. So you might cut open a rabbit and be like, oh, look at that, that's a new science fact I didn't know about.
Yikes. Just like
Mm-hmm.
obstructed intestines and all that.
um we've had one case where we took in for free this like really, really, really obese girl who was kept in a cage way too tiny her whole life. And this was early on in our venture. We're still learning and everything. And we were trying to breed her, but not us. The
Yeah.
one who owned her had tried to breed her and she never produced a litter. So we're like, okay, we'll just let her live free range in the rabbit colony. Let her live the rest of her life happy. The next day she had broken her back. She got a little too excited and she broke her back and we had to put her down. And I can't think of the name of it, but there's actually this freaking rare type of genetic issue that rabbits can have where they produce way too much body fat, and they like their ovarian horns is what they're called, where they grow all their babies, just
Yeah.
like fills up with like fluid and all, and it causes like obesity issues and stuff. Yeah, one of our first freaking rabbits turned out to have that.
Yikes.
Yeah, I've had rabbits with 2 dicks. Yeah, I've had
That is
that.
a wild
Oh
mutation.
yeah. Yep.
Fuck.
All kinds of.
I'm gonna use that. I've used the crazier than a frog with 2 dicks, but rabbit with 2 dicks is a good one too.
I've actually had that twice, believe it or not. Had that twice.
Fuck.
It's actually not uncommon for rabbits to be hermaphrodites either. I surprisingly, I have not had that, but apparently it's not that uncommon. I have a cyclops newborn rabbit in my freezer.
One eye.
I've had that. Yeah, I've had that before. I've had a freaking hermaphrodite rabbit.
Their genetic chain is not very complex, so when it goes wrong, it really goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? That's another thing I would like to mention about rabbit breeding, because a lot of people are concerned about inbreeding in rabbits.
It's not a thing.
It's not a thing. Exactly. I think there was like a test done, and I think it was something like 52 uh, lines of inbreeding before there was a single genetic issue that was directly related to inbreeding.
They're already so inbred, it's almost impossible to
Oh
increase.
no, they totally are. In fact, that's actually how a lot of breeders get rabbits with the best genetics, because they'll have a litter. Say the mother has like this perfect build, like show worthy build, and then they produce a baby who also has that perfect show worthy build plus some other desirable trait, and so they'll breed those two back and back and produce more litters with that desirable trait. We actually did that for a while with not with our meat rabbits, with one of our pet breeds, because one of our pet breeds actually happened to be this really freaking rare, like $350 rabbit that just kind of got dropped on our lap. We had no idea what he was. So we did that for a while to bring out some of his genes as well. And there was that line. We've never had issues with that line. The inbreeding issues actually came from other rabbits that I used for meat purposes. The ones that I raised for these specific traits never had an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've heard that too. There's no uh noticeable difference because I don't know the science behind it, like I guess humans have 23 chromosomes or whatever in their DNA on each side, but a rabbit's only got like 6 or something. So it's just so much simpler that the like the parameters for something to go wrong are so freaking wide that it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. It really does not happen through inbreeding at all. That's just not a thing with rabbits.
It's kind of like
And in the
growing weed.
wild, in the wild, they're going to be breeding together anyway. You know, you're not putting them in the same area is not making them do anything they aren't already instinctively doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could actually say that humans not inbreeding them would be changing the way they mate, because that's us controlling their genetics better
Oh
than
no,
anybody.
it totally is. That's exactly what it is. People will try to change their genetics around. And I actually have a breed that is not an official breed. It is a specialty controlled breed that people are trying to make an official breed. You know, like I had to go to New Mexico to get them. But yeah, that's all it is. In fact, most of the meat breeds that we know now, New Zealand's and Rex's, none of them are actually purebreds. This whole like stigma that, oh, you need to keep your rabbits purebred, they don't exist. They are all the result of people just messing around with the genetics and trying to go for a desired look.
A lot like strains of weed,
I
because
actually have no experience in that, to be honest. So I'll just take your word for it.
it reminds me of it because in when you're breeding weed seeds for certain genetics, you call it an inbred line,
Okay.
where you back it up onto itself so that its seeds aren't going to produce like hybrid traits.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's kind
No,
of
it
funny.
is.
Kind of
Yeah.
funny.
And so, there's freaking rabbit shows and just like any other farm, and at the fair or at 4-H or whatever it is. And it's so dumb to me, to be honest. Because again, oh, mine is more purebred than yours. No, it's not. That's not a purebred. Even like Holland Lops, even like the cute little pet bunnies that, the ones, the little floppy ears and stuff. Those are inbred little bastards.
Oh, 100%.
you know and dogs, same with lots of dog breeds, there's no such thing as purebred, so people need to get that hoity-toityness right out of their heads.
Except for maybe huskies.
I don't know much about husky breeds genetically, but
They're so arcane, they're from way back in the day. They haven't changed
yeah,
much.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I 100% agree. Everything out there is a hybrid. You just don't know from where.
Oh, totally. Hell, even bananas aren't natural.
Fucking bananas are a horrible example of. Did you know that all bananas that we eat are a clone of one specific piece of genetics? So
Oh,
that sorry, so
no, go
that
ahead.
they actually lost entire species of bananas. Like I can't remember if it was the 1800s or if it was the 80s, which is a large window, but it happened at a certain point in South America. There was this huge some sort of pest or disease just wiped out this entire strain of bananas, and all we have now is the second best option. That's why we have these bananas that have like a metallic taste. They used to not even consider them food quality back
Oh
when they
my
had the other
gosh.
genetics, but they all got wiped out because they're all from clones of the exact same thing. So if one thing hits it, it hits them all.
Well, tequila, blue agave, is getting harder and harder to grow. It's in very high demand. One blue agave plant, the pina, the part that you actually use to make, only makes about 9 bottles of tequila. That's it. And so imagine how much you have to be able to produce so much tequila. So they're actually working on genetically cloning perfect agave plants for that to keep up with the demand for tequila.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of them are clones. That just makes a
They
lot of
are.
sense.
Yeah, they are. So I mean, it's like, nothing, none of it is natural. And in the wild, rabbits don't give a, I can promise you, rabbits don't give a crap about what breed they're breeding with. I've actually seen one of my girls, she freaking broke free and she was out freaking having her way with the wild cottontails. They won't actually produce anything because they're too genetically different. That didn't stop her.
Oh, that's too bad. That'd be cool to have a hybrid.
Yeah, they're too genetically different to produce viable babies, but they don't care.
Yeah,
They do not care.
kind of like a horse and a donkey, right?
I've had a rabbit try to freaking breed with my cat. Like, they do not care. They're just doing what they're meant to do in nature, which is breed as part of the food chain.
That's a pretty solid recommendation for rabbits. How do you feed your I guess stocks?
We use Onyate 18% rabbit feed. And sometimes we'll add in, like, we also give them like fruits and vegetables and stuff too. Sometimes we will give them the cattle pellets. They're like those big hard tube things, and they're made out of like sunflower seeds and other stuff. We'll give them a little bit of that sometimes to just kind of, especially for the moms who are just constantly eating. We give them, hay to munch on, and sometimes we'll add in a little bit of sweet feed, like for goats and such. Don't do very much to anybody who's curious, because it does have molasses. You don't want to give a bunch of rabbits sugar. And if they get too much, they will get sick. They will get diarrhea from it, and you just don't want that. So like a tiny little bit occasionally to help keep their weight on, especially for those pregnant moms, is fine. I like to add oats to the girls because they're high carbs and it'll help them keep their weight on, and it's good for their nursing. You can also add a little bit of flax meal because that'll help their milk production as well, and their estrogen stay high. So yeah, I try to give them a fairly healthy, well-rounded diet.
Wow, that's a lot different than what I was expecting. I thought they would hay.
I mean, the pellets that you normally get, the feed, it is made of hay, but there's just a lot of other stuff you can give them to sort of just boost their overall health and their production and everything. So I try to throw that in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Make them perform as well as they can.
Exactly.
How many do you have?
You have to stop and think.
Yeah, I
As
mean,
as far as, because I've got a few that I'm trying to rehome, but as far as breeders go, I'm thinking. Right now, I have a total of like 12 breeders, and then the rest are just available for rehoming.
wow, it's a lot of
Hope,
rabbits.
well, hopefully, I'll be having some litters this time next week.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a pretty good topic. Like, how quick is the turnaround between?
Like, very quick.
So you have pretty much baby rabbits to deal with constantly.
Not so much in the warmer seasons. They don't like to breed in the summer, and I don't like making them breed in the summer either. It's because they're the moms are like any other pregnant mom. They get overheated, they get stressed out. So I'm not going to subject them to that in the heat. But in fact, oftentimes males will actually sterilize themselves temporarily in the summer.
Yeah,
So
go dormant.
yeah, they will. So right now, they're finally last month they're finally willing to start breeding. So everyone was getting hooked up and everything. And so I should have a few girls giving birth like next week. So, and then we stop the breeding season right around April to May, depending on the weather. Kind of fluctuates a bit. We don't want it to be any more than like 87 degrees when we're breeding them at the absolute most, because we just don't want to get too hot.
Yeah, and they go all winter.
They can, if they want to. They can be a little finicky. Sometimes it's just too cold and they don't want to. They kind of need to feel that spring weather to really want to do that, So some will, others won't. And some of the girls are picky too. They get like types, and it drives me insane.
They just won't let anything happen.
No, I had one girl. She'd only breed with males that had like brown spots. Yeah, I had like two males she would willingly breed with, one of which was actually infertile, so didn't do me any good.
Bingo. Uh, that's a lot on. Do you have any more homesteading topics you want to cover?
uh, Not much. I just say if anybody's really, really curious, there's a multitude of information on YouTube. That is pretty much where I learned like everything from how to feed them, how to process them, how to take care of the babies and do the pelts and the rabbit feet and everything. Just literally just learned all throughout YouTube. So I highly recommend you do that if you're interested. And if you have space to do it and you want to be more self-reliant, especially with everybody flipping out over
Coronavirus.
doomsday prep and all that crap, well, this is get yourself a big old freezer and start prepping.
That's a pretty good tie into agorism and how this relates to self-reliance and how self-reliance relates to agorism.
Mm-hmm.
You know that whole
I'm
circle.
I'm very heavily pro agorism, so
Yeah, I mean, I think you presented the case extremely well for rabbits.
yep, yep. I recommend it to everybody. So
Well, it's been good talking to you.
good talking to you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the podcast to talk about agriculture.
No problem. Bye bye.
Have a good day.
You too.